There we go. Dear Linda, there are about 40 people on the other side here of where I am speaking. And Jonathan's waving to you in particular. So tonight is kind of a split Dharma talk. First of all, we usually do meditation instruction on the first night of the retreat. And that'll be part of my talk about the meditation, Dhyana Paramita. That is the meditation on, the Paramita on meditation. But I want to talk first just about what the Paramitas are. There are a couple of descriptions. The one that is part of our retreat, of course, that we put on all of our flyers, and so this is what we're trying to do, is going to the other shore. And I want to talk about going to the other shore a little bit more, but just to have an idea about that. The one shore has got a lot of different names. I'm finding this is really interesting, not only from the standpoint of the Dharma, but of places outside of the Dharma. So the shore that we are trying to get from is often called samsara, the realm of suffering. It's also caused things like the historical dimension. It's also called the reactive mind. It's also called the deluded mind. A lot of different things that go on with that. And you pass to this other shore, which is called nirvana, or the ultimate dimension, or true mind. And it's the idea about having a raft to get there. Let me put that aside for a second because I want to address one other thing about this particular situation. There are 84,000 Dharma doors, the Buddha said. I don't know where they came up with the number of 84,000, and I've never seen a list of 84,000 Dharma doors, but this is the idea. In other words, whether it's 84,000 or maybe just 500, there are a lot of ways to go from the place that we call samsara to the place that we call nirvana. And we've just picked 6 of them. And I think when we say about the 6 paramitas, we actually talk about like what were your 6 favorite Beatles songs or something. That would be kind of, there are certainly many things that fall into the categories of things that take us to the other shore. So for example, loving kindness is on some list, on the expanded list of 10 that some traditions have. And we'll be, my partner Jane will be handling that tomorrow afternoon. I'm not talking Tuesday afternoon. And is that a paramita? Well, anything can be a paramita. So the other thing that is about the paramitas as a term that give me a little trouble is they're often called perfections. And we all know that it's very difficult to achieve perfection in anything. And it is a situation that is fraught with failure if you think you're going to perfect the meditation paramita, for example, or the meditation or the paramita of generosity. We all tend to want to go closer to that, but the idea of perfections. Some wise person, I think Greg Valdi, who's it, Greg, that said that perfection is the enemy of the good, something along those lines, some famous French philosopher. Voltaire. And the idea about, so I want to set aside the idea of perfections because it's just fraught with this kind of failure. Whether you're talking about deluded mind and true mind, or historical dimension, or ultimate dimension, or nirvana and samsara, the idea about going from one shore to the other shore is that they're actually the same. They actually have the same sort of things. So we're living on this realm that's called samsara, and we build a raft. That's the classic analogy. And you build a raft, and the raft takes you from one shore to the other shore. And The Paramitas are considered these rafts. A couple of things about that. Number one, I'm not sure that your raft necessarily needs to be a single paramita. Maybe it's a catamaran with, using both generosity and meditation or whatever, or that you've got, 12 different logs, each with a different virtue. So I'm not sure that the idea of just having a paramita, one skillful means that would be good for you, including just the ones on this list. And the second thing is, it always seems to me to look like a solitary practice. And if there's anything I've learned in my 33 years of doing Dharma, is that it's not a solitary practice. It's just not a solitary practice. We are all in this together. This is the way it is. And in reality, one of the things that about the idea of going to the other shore is to feel that kind of connection, to go from this disconnection to this connection. When I practice nowadays, and I am encouraged by so many teachers, including our teacher Thich Nhat Hanh, to evolve. So I do things differently than I did 5 years or 10 years ago. Some of my favorite meditations are things I had no idea even existed 10 years ago. The idea, however, is that, everything is kind of an evolutionary thing. You continue to be fluid with it. You continue to kind of grow with that. Oh, and there's somebody in sideways. And I like to think of it as being more like a flotilla of rafts. I like to think we're all crossing on the same river together. And that maybe if my raft gets a little unsteady, I can come over and sidle next to your raft and you'll help me out and steady me and that kind of thing. So I really like the idea that we are much more likely to be, in this together, that it's not just this solitary practice that goes on. So if the idea about the idea of samsara, let's just use those two terms, not to confuse things with the other kinds of things I've been using, that samsara and nirvana are pretty much the same thing. There must be a difference. And as far as I can tell, the biggest difference is, if you go from samsara, let's just say samsara is a particular place, a land, you're on one side of, say, I don't know, the Missouri River, and you're crossing to the other side of the Missouri River. The plants are kind of the same, right? The animals are kind of the same. The weather is kind of the same. The kind of the soil is similar. Maybe there's a similar rock formation. Nothing is very different except this one thing. In the land of nirvana, there are no fences. That's it, I think. I think when we live in this land of samsara, which is not have fences or delineation by itself, we build them. We put them in the way. We say this is this way, but it is not that way. We say that this is separate from that. And everything is interdependent. But when we get to the land of nirvana, the fences all disappear. There they are. Now we are free. And we don't need that. And I think the other thing that might be going is the idea of what are called signs. One of the 3 marks of the Buddha was signlessness. In order to have a specific authenticity to a teaching, you have to talk about signlessness. Whenever we define something, we automatically eliminate other things, and we put ourselves into a certain box. Now, this is kind of important at certain times. For example, when you drove here, you put yourself in the box of people who are driving on the right side of the road. That's not bad discrimination. I think it really goes that way. And I also say that in the historical dimension, It's the only place where you can get a good bagel with cream cheese. And that's important. And I like that idea. But in so many of the other things, particularly in our relationships with other people, our relationships with nature, our relationships with our own mortality, all of those things can dissolve and you can be free of them by crossing to the other shore in whatever manner, whatever shape you can do that. So during this retreat, we're going to talk about these 6 particular things that are part of the classic list of perfections. And we may not necessarily, and we may touch on some of the others, but I like the idea that there are many, many ways to kind of do that. So I want to go on though and talk about the meditation that's really this Dharma talk is about. I mean, this Paramita, this Dharma talk is about, which is meditation, one of the 6 that he talks about. It's very interesting. Many of us, so a little history about how Buddhist writings became. It's kind of interesting that near the end of his life, people went to Gautama Siddhartha, the Buddha, and said, Master, you know, you've taught us a lot of really cool things. We really appreciate it. That's really nice. Yeah, but you're getting up in age, you know, and you know, probably in his 70s, which is really old back then. And he and they asked him, can we like write some of this down so we don't forget it? And he said, don't write down any words, seek what I sought. The idea of being a seeker and not necessarily being tied to words, being tied to concepts, being tied to a particular, certainly not being tied to a particular theology, is the way that he wanted to be. Yet, they did a strange thing, and I guess we're grateful that they did a strange thing. Ananda, who was his main attendant, plus a couple of others, had very good memories, and they memorized his talks. And so for really about 500 years, think of that. The sutra monks, or as they were called, every monastery or every group of travelers had a sutra monk. He was kind of your library, and you would say, sutra monk, tell us the sutra on the better way to catch a snake. And it's interesting if you look at the classic ways that even as they turn written down, they always start with the words, thus have I heard, that kind of thing. So they were teaching this kind of stuff for years. And then the main people in Sri Lanka were the people who were taking care of that's where you went to become a sutra monk, is you went to Sri Lanka and learned how to do that. And they were having a plague and a famine, and they were afraid that all the sutra monks were going to die. So they finally convinced one guy to write it down. And it's interesting, Thich Nhat Hanh talks about this, and he says, and he seemed to be kind of an angry monk. So we're all depending on all these teachings from one angry monk. But anyway, that's all right. Hopefully he got it right. Backing up on that, the very basic subset of this is something called the Pali Canon, which was written in a language. Pali is like the Latin of Buddhism. And it's interesting because just like Jesus never spoke Latin, the Buddha never spoke Pali, but all of these things were kind of translated into Pali. And the reason I mention that is that Pali Canon is considered to be authentic, more authentic perhaps than other teachers. Certainly many people would say that. Always can be debated. In the first list of 10 Paramitas that falls in the Pali Canon, meditation is not listed. It's not one of the 10. Became later, especially with a lot of Zen traditions, as being included. I guess the closest thing in that list of 10 that was meditation is something called renunciation. But it wasn't really even part of that. So it just goes to show you that their rafts are different than maybe what our rafts are. We know that the Buddha certainly asked people to meditate and thought it was important, but it wasn't part of the list. It was kind of interesting. So the idea behind meditation as one of the original paramitas is kind of a false one. But we still have it, and we still use it, and we still like doing it. There are a zillion ways to be mindful. That's what's really nice about this. You know, that's what Thich Nhat Hanh talked about, and what we have all learned is the idea of being mindful. And being mindful does not necessarily mean meditation. It might, but it doesn't have to be meditation. So if you were driving up here and feeling, hopefully, feeling the feel of the car under the road, seeing the wonderful rolling Wisconsin countryside, et cetera, you were doing a mindfulness practice as much as doing mindfulness meditation. And so mindfulness meditation, the real key in the Plum Village tradition is mindfulness, not meditation per se, but mindfulness. And yet we all meditate. And the reason that we meditate is we feel that that is the most effective way to be good, mindful people. So that's kind of how that is all going right now, is the idea is let's all kind of do meditation so that we can be mindful in our day-to-day lives. So we want to be able to be mindful when we're having a conversation with someone. We certainly want to be mindful when we're having a difficult conversation with someone. We want to be mindful when we are uncomfortable and in pain. We want to be mindful when we see things in the news, for example, that make us uncomfortable and in pain. And meditation, mindfulness meditation, is something that basically is there for us to be able to be mindful in our daily lives. I know people like this, and they're not very, certainly I don't know very many people. Matter of fact, I don't think I know a single person in the Plum Village tradition like this, but I do know people who will get on the cushion a lot. And I've met them, and it doesn't seem to change them much. And I think that's sad. Ty has always had the idea that the cushion is more of a laboratory or a springboard to our regular life rather than an end in itself. And so that's kind of how we're going with all of that. So I want to talk about my evolution as a teacher. Just as Thich Nhat Hanh has said, you know, if we're doing the same practice for 10 years, that we that there's something wrong. I've been teaching since '96, so I definitely need to be able to do something a little bit different. And I would say that even when we started to do this 6 years ago, that the idea that I would have done about this teaching sitting on a Sunday night would have been a lot about form. And when I have taught my classes, I taught a lot about form. And I guess I fell into that kind of trap that a lot of Zen people do. A lot of Zen teachers, and a lot of these people I've read, have thought that form is everything in regard to meditation. You really have to have the proper form. I don't want to do that anymore. And if you're really interested in form and how I used to teach form, you can bump it up on our website under meditation instruction. And I'll tell you all about the kind of things about how to hold your hands and all that other sort of stuff. I warn you though, however, do not do this while you are already tired. You will fall asleep. It is incredibly boring. And I can't believe I taught it like that for the longest time. I will just hit the highlights of the three major things for meditation in the Plum Village tradition. And one of them ties to what I want to follow next. So, but let's just start with that. Sit up straight, follow your breath, and smile. And that's kind of it. That's the whole 9 yards of the form and all the other stuff. And I would even say that's not right, because we have a lot of people who we have been encouraging lately to lie down when they meditate. I mean, the only reason that we had people not lying down when they meditate is because they tend to fall asleep. And especially if you're in Sangha and someone's snoring, it's just really annoying. But lying down is fine. Standing is fine. Doing walking meditation is fine. So we don't even say that you have to sit anymore to kind of do that. Following your breath is probably the one key to that, and it's just following your breath, and there's a million ways to do that. And those of you who know a lot of the yoga traditions or have learned meditation in Vipassana or Zen traditions will know a little bit about how to do that. But that's not important. The smile falls into the other category of the two things that I want, the two instructions that I want to give that I am now really kind of involved with. I think the most important thing that you do when you do a round of meditation is intention. Why are you doing this? What is happening now? I have decided out of all of my life that in this particular time, in this particular place, I'm going to sit and do meditation. And getting in touch with your intention is really important, I think. The idea, of course, is that you may have many different intentions. The list of reasons why people meditate is very long, and you may have any of them. And on any particular, even in one meditation session, you may change. You may be meditating because you want to relax. That's probably the first thing that people get into, is kind of doing that with relaxing. And it's relaxing for some people not, but that may be it. You may be meditating because you want to have a better handle on emotional regulation. You want to be able to know what to do about being angry or sad or fearful. Perfectly good reason as well. You may be doing meditation because you've just made that effort, you put it on your calendar, and you decided to do it, and gosh darn it, you're going to do it. That's also a good idea. That's also kind of the idea about kind of going upstream from where your habitual habits are. And you may be doing your meditation to connect. And I hope that's what really happens, but you may be doing it to see, I want to feel how this is in connection to the rest of the world, to the rest of my environment, to the whole cosmos, if you can, and have that kind of feeling. And I want to offer that as, if you haven't been using that as an intention, and I'm not saying use it every time, I'm not saying even use it at all if it doesn't really fit for you, but to sit on the cushion and kind of connect with all this stuff around you. No one steps in the same river twice. It's a very old Greek philosopher, Heraclitus, I think. Did I get that right, Greg? I think, yeah, okay. The idea that everything is always changing, everything is in flow. You are already different from when you walked in here at 7. You're just different. Everything has changed. We did a little ceremony. You listened to Kathleen. You learned about the cow pad shortage. All that sort of stuff. All these kinds of things. Now you have all this new stuff, and other stuff got crowded out, and you don't even know what it is. You used to know what the state flower for Iowa was, for example, and now that's gone, or whatever. So the whole bunch of things. There's this constant flow. You kind of know what's coming in. You don't always know what's going out. But you're always changing, completely in that kind of flow. And the great illusion that we have, that we are a separate self, can absolutely be fed by meditation. I'm sitting on the cushion. It's me sitting on the cushion. No matter how much I want to think about someone else sitting on the cushion, it's me sitting on the cushion. I'm taking this effort. I'm making this sort of thing. I'm doing it. It's my breath. We can look at it that way. And so I actually think that for some people, the practice of meditation can be insulated. It can be a kind of thing where we actually do try to draw ourselves into this little area of armor, as Pema Chodron talks it. And we can do that. And I'm hoping that's not the case. Much better to sit there and say, I breathe in, and I am breathing in an immense history of all the things that have ever gone on this planet. When you breathe in, you're breathing in the same air, the same nitrogen, the same oxygen that a mastodon or a Tyrannosaurus Rex or your great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-grandfather hunter-gatherers were doing. You're doing the same sort of thing, and you'll breathe it out, and your descendants will do this, and other people will do this. You have microscopic flows. You're vibrating at an enormous rate all the time. You think you're inactive, but you're vibrating like crazy. All of these molecules, all this stuff is going on. And this tremendously wonderful transition, just amazing how it is. And so I often like, and this is something that you can try tonight if you like, or some other time. One of my favorite meditations, and I like to give credit to, well, first of all, I just want to say, people who know me know this, I steal from everybody. I have zero original ideas. So just so you know, I'm not taking credit for any, I steal from everybody. And when I think of it, I remember who I stole from, and I'm doing that now. A wonderful teacher by the name of Rick Hansen, who has given me one of these new meditations, which is to sit in a room and notice the spaciousness of the room. And what a room to be in tonight. This is a beautiful room here. Look at the space of this. And these other 40 some odd people. Well, you're not that odd, but anyway. And being able to kind of have that kind of connection, to feel that, to go beyond this boundary of this kind of little body that's going on and realize the connection, the flow. It is much, much easier to give up that clinging, that holding on to the ego, that protecting of the self, when you can open up and see the expansiveness just in this particular room. And of course, if you really are open to it, you can expand to all 158 acres of the Christine Center, all the wonderful little animals out there, the deer and the rabbits, and there's a couple goats on the property too. They're all fun. And all of this sort of thing, and all of this kind of combination of this beautiful, beautiful transition of nature from one thing to the other. Or even beyond this to the planet and the universe. And the more we go and move away from our own individual self. I have some gatas, and I left them out by and you may have already picked them up from the table. I have them specifically because there's 5 of them, and I want to talk about the idea of the Buddha doing breathing for us. The 5 gatas are there. I wanted to take one for each day of walking meditation on it. Well, but you could use them for your regular sitting meditation. You know, you are breathing as the Buddha. You have the same Buddha nature. You are breathing as the Buddha. There you are, sitting there, breathing just like the Buddha did. And you're actually breathing some of the same molecules that the Buddha did. Someone else who is kind of geeky scientific figured out that right here, right now, you all have roughly 50 atoms that the Buddha had in his body, and 50 that Jesus Christ had, and Joan of Arc, and Cleopatra, and one of your great ancestors, perhaps a Neanderthal, and maybe one of your, maybe one of the animals lived back then, the mastodons or the giant kangaroos or whatever, or even going way back to the Big Bang. It's all kind of come together here. It's all kind of continuing to ebb and flow. Really wonderful. So the second part of that, other than intention, is the idea of appreciation. Wow, you have been given this chance, this precious human birth we call. And I'm not going to be speciesist and say that my precious human birth is better than, say, the rabbit that's out there. I don't know. That rabbit may be the happiest creature on the planet. I don't know. But I do know that human beings, that we have this wonderful opportunity to transform. And that's something that probably the rabbit doesn't have. One of the things that we have, maybe it's our biology, maybe it's something spiritual that's beyond our biology, I don't know. But we don't have to sit there and take it. We don't have to be the sufferer. We don't have to do that. We have to work at it. It doesn't happen overnight. But this is the wonderful gift that the Buddha said. The Buddha said, A, everybody suffers. B, they don't have to. C, anybody can do this. It was really interesting how he said that. He said, I just can't believe this. I mean, that was one of his things. Sitting under this Bodhi tree at night. We'll talk about the Bodhi tree sometime. And he said, it's really amazing. Everybody can do this. How come we're not doing it? And this is your opportunity. This is your opportunity. And of course, I think it's really good that we're doing it here together in this wonderful togetherness here, to have that kind of appreciation, to have that kind of feeling that we aren't on these rafts all by ourselves. We are a flotilla of rafts. We are all in this together. I think that's what you're here for, right? I don't think any of you just, I mean, if you really decided that you wanted to come and learn about meditation, well, I mean, especially nowadays, there's a million things you can get on YouTube. You can sit in your own little bedroom and do a whole weekend or a whole week just kind of looking at YouTube videos all by yourself, and you can do just fine. You can learn a whole bunch of stuff and new techniques and everything. But you're here. And why are you here? You're here because of these other people. You're here because we have this inherent idea that being with other people is a valuable thing, and it helps take us to the other shore. Wow, what a wonderful thing. So the other thing, and I always kind of mention it a little bit in sort of passing, and people tend to have a little bit of a like, huh? The one thing that Thich Nhat Hanh did in his meditation instruction that, as far as I can tell, was unique. I've never heard another teacher do it. Oh, actually, I did hear another teacher do it once, but I think that person was doing it because of influence from Thich Nhat Hanh. The smile. The smile. Bring the smile to your face when you're doing sitting meditation. It doesn't have to be this big grin. It can be just kind of this little precious little Mona Lisa smile. Bring this appreciation to yourself. Bring this appreciation like, wow, isn't this cool? Isn't this cool? Be as little children, or you shall not enter the kingdom of heaven. That's another sort of famous philosopher. I forget who he was, from somebody from the Middle East somewhere. Wasn't Rumi, I know that, but the idea, I mean, if we really want to see mindfulness machines, look at toddlers, right? I mean, there they are. You give a toddler a cookie and it's like, wow, a cookie. This is amazing. And they try to do transcutaneous feeding, smear it all over their face. If they see a dog, it's like seeing an angel. It's like, wow, this is a dog. We have that inherent, and so when we talk about being born with Buddha nature, and I think we are, this is what happens. We can see it so well in our toddlers and our babies, Those babies, when they start to smile and kick their legs, I mean, my goodness, they're just like Buddha nature right out in front. And over the years, it's been buried. It's been buried by so many little things that we do in our society. It's been done by the idea that the older human being, even without all that societal push, has been taught to bury that Buddha nature under worry, fear, and anxiety. And it takes different, flavors in different times in our career and in different cultures. But that's what we did. We did this. We as toddlers were just beautifully perfect Buddhas. And then somewhere along the line, we grew up. But it's not gone. It's there. It's there for the touching. We can do it. We can touch our Buddha nature all the time. And this is what our practice is all about. Sometimes that armor that we've been placing on ourselves is pretty creaky and rusty and really tough to get through. Doesn't matter, you still kind of work at it. It's the idea of just kind of going with the practice, having the intention, I'm going to sit here and be connected. Or the other things, I'm going to sit here and just learn to deal with my habit energies. I'm going to transform my difficulties. And maybe you can have this idea, maybe, that it's not just transforming your difficulties for yourself, but transforming it for all human beings, all sentient beings, even all non-sentient beings, to allow that all to happen. So yeah, I mean, if you want to, like I say, you can look up my thing online. Maybe I'll get it removed. The idea about how you hold your hands, you know, what you do with your shoulders and all that other really cool junk. And just go with this. What's your intention? Why are you sitting? Feel what your intention is. If you have an idea, see if you can expand that intention to include more than yourself. Maybe not, but you'll get there. And have gratitude. Have gratitude. There it is. We can actually do this. We can actually become that wonderful bubbling toddler all over again. We can do it. People talk about a second childhood, but we can do it. We can actually do this. All we have to do is just put in the time, and we need the help of good spiritual friends. I've always wondered about those guys that went off to be hermits. I don't know. I mean, and maybe I have my own little prejudice about that. But I think it's always better if we can kind of get together with other people and to be able to do this. Isn't it so much easier to sit with a group of folks? I sit at home and it's nice. I go to Sangha and I sit and it's like really delicious. Sort of like putting, I don't know, chocolate syrup on your ice cream. It's great when you're doing it at home, but it's even better. And then, I don't know, today's maybe not only the chocolate syrup, but a little sprinkled nuts and maybe the cherry. I don't know. I'm getting too weird with my metaphors here. So. But it's Wisconsin. You have to bring in things like ice cream and custard and stuff like that. And you have to have cow metaphors, which is why we already have a cow metaphor. Not the last cow metaphor I'm going to come up with before we're done with this particular retreat. So this is what we do. This is the dhyana paramita, the paramita of meditation, to travel to the other shore, to be still and quiet and follow our breath and have the intention that we wish to be still and quiet and follow our breath, and that we want to have this great connection to re-examine, to retouch our own Buddha nature, to the wonderful poem that is called Love After Love by Derek Walcott, where he says, that we've often had this idea that you want to come back to the person you love, that you have neglected for another, but who has always been there for you. Your Buddha nature, even when it feels like it's a million, even when that other shore, you can't see the other shore. You know it's there, you saw the map, you know it's so long, it's so far away. Even then, you can get to the other shore. You can get to the other shore. Just takes maybe a little bit longer and goes with that. And maybe it's like, hey, anybody got a paddle? Anybody, can we kind of do this together? Because that's what I like to think about what the Paramitas is. We're all in this together. We're all in this together. And the other part about that is we have learned, as part of our biology, we have learned to connect. We actually had the basic idea of connection. We connected with our tribe. This is how we're put together, is to connect to our tribe. Without getting into the whole weird biology and all that evolutionary psychology. That's also part of our things. Happiness, as Ty says, happiness is not an individual matter. It is not an individual matter. It is a matter that we can kind of work on together. So thank you all for your kind attention tonight as we talk about our meditation instruction. We'll be doing meditation tonight and every morning, every night at 8:30 except for campfire, and every morning at 7 o'clock, sitting meditation in this room. We'll be doing walking meditation at 6:30 as well. So at any rate, does anybody have a question or a comment before we close? Including you people on Zoom, I see you there. So. Well, thank you all for your kind attention. We'll take about a 15-minute break, and those who wish, I hope most of you, we will return and do sitting meditation right here in this room. We'll paddle a little bit further to get to the other shore right here, right now. I just want to bring the bell out here. Thank you all.